Okay, I'll call our meeting to order. It is Wednesday, September 18th. We are in the police station holding our meeting tonight to interview town administrator candidates. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so let me give an overview for the evening. First I give Westwood Media Center approval to record the meeting. Anyone else recording tonight's meeting? Okay. Tonight we'll be interviewing 4 candidates for the town administrator position. We will do one at a time. After the first 2 candidates, we'll take a 5-minute stretch, 7th inning stretch, but it will be between candidates 2 and 3 because it's going to be a long evening. Each round will take about 45 minutes. And from there, at the end of the evening, we'll conclude, and then we'll reconvene for a meeting Monday night when we'll deliberate and make a selection for town administrator. So I will invite Chris Coleman, please. Welcome.
Thank you.
That's the hot seat for you. It's great to have you here tonight.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
And I just want to say we appreciate your interest in the town administrator position. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to give you a chance to make an opening statement to us, or just give a brief introduction, and then we'll get into everything.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
My name is Christopher Coleman. I've been working in local government in Massachusetts for 25 years now. I started off in the town of Marblehead as an assistant treasurer collector, moved on to the town of Wenham as the treasurer collector, then the town of Lincoln as an assistant town administrator, and currently I'm with the town of Needham, where I've been for the last 14 years as their assistant town manager, director of operations. I'm very excited about the opportunity. This is my first time interviewing for this type of position, and I say that because there's a personal attachment to the town of Westwood for me. My mother's side of the family grew up here. We still have a family home here. I have a lot of memories growing up in the town of Westwood, everything from Bubbling Brook to sledding on the golf course. So there's a lot of synergy for me with this application and this opportunity, so thank you very much.
Great, okay. We have a lot of questions that we'll get into, but I'd like to give you a chance to make a brief presentation. We've asked all the candidates if they have materials, and I think we have something from
Yes.
you. No more than 7 minutes, okay? And the board, John Hickey, who you've met, Michael Walsh, will potentially ask questions on that, and then I'll go into some other questions.
So the project that I'm sharing with you in my involvement in it is the Rosemary Recreation Complex, which is the town's, in Needham, the town pool. We had a seasonal facility and a pool that was built in the 70s in the lake, and we were moving it out of the lake, and we were discussing whether or not to have a year-round facility. The challenge with the year-round facility was the cost. But we had a number of issues within the community. We had a challenge with our health department in the newly renovated town hall. Their particular suite, they had indoor air quality issues. So we had members of the health department that were spread out amongst the community. We also had issues in our public service administration building where our park and recreation department was housed, because we were growing and we were kind of breaking at the seams a little bit. So we had issues trying to fit people in proper places and to make the space more accommodating for everyone, including the residents. We had a number of situations that happened, and one of the things we were trying to do is to really identify the cost for this project. So it was an outdoor pool in New England. Some people had some concerns with that. The residents wanted the outdoor pool. They felt it was a great community gathering spot, and we were moving forward with those plans. But to develop the second floor was one of the challenges that we had. So I worked with the town manager, I spoke with the town manager extensively, and there was a lot of pushback regarding the cost. So one of the things that I did was I said, we're really talking about a delta of $3 million. It's a significant amount of money, but if you take into account, we could have it we could have office space for our public health department, we could have office space for our park and recreation department, and our park and recreation department was going to have dedicated program space. They've been very creative through the years using different facilities throughout the town, but they didn't have their own space. And so once we were able to identify some of the benefits and the cost to the town manager, She then took that, we took that to the Select Board, and then from there, the Select Board took it to the Park and Recreation Commission, the Finance Committee, and also our Public Permanent Building Committee. And we had enough positive movement in this to bring it to town meeting, and ultimately, they did support to fund that project. And now we have 2 departments in good, clean space. We have more space in our Public Service Administration building, and we also have more space in the Town Hall that we're looking to renovate for some different office staff.
Any questions on?
No, I mean, I did, I told you, it kind of jumped out at me earlier when you said, you haven't applied for a job like this before. In fact, you haven't applied for a job in how many years?
14.
So I think it just shows a level of seriousness, and I appreciated that.
Oh, thank you.
A question I would have on this particular project,
Yes.
Chris, could you just speak a little more about your particular role in that process? You've highlighted things.
Yes.
And I hear and I just would like to drill down a little bit more on the role you actually played
Okay.
in that project.
I understand. I worked with the Director of Public Health and the Director of Park and Recreations, where we came together and we tried to identify different synergies that the 2 departments would have to understand, because at first, when you think about it, Public Health, Park and Recreation, some people didn't think there was a lot of synergy, but we identified the synergy, and more importantly, we identified how the benefit would be to bring all the public health employees back into one location. And we worked with we identified different points, we presented those points, I worked with them, I presented those to the town manager to try to have her understand some of the benefits that maybe others weren't seeing, and trying to get her to help us move this project
Yeah.
along forward. And she did a really good job at that.
Yeah. And in that process, did you speak to town meeting, or who actually makes the presentation at town meeting?
So presentation typically is representative from the Finance Committee, representative from Park and Recreation Commission, and representative from the Public Permit Building Committee.
I see. Great. Okay, so why don't we move on to some other questions? And then somewhere along the way, I'm going to interject a scenario and ask you to
Okay.
respond to that, okay?
Great.
Being a town administrator requires knowledge and skills in a variety of areas: finance, personnel management, land use, collective bargaining, et cetera, et cetera. In what areas of municipal management responsibility do you feel you're strongest? In what areas may you have less experience or expertise that might need you to rely more on other staff members? So why don't you just tell us where you're the strongest first?
Sure. Strongest in human resources. I was the human resources director in Needham, as well as serving as the human resources director for the town of Lincoln. And with my background in college, I went to school, I have an accounting degree. I was planning on becoming a CPA. I changed into local government, and working as an assistant treasurer collector and a treasurer collector, I have municipal finance background. So I'm strong in those 2 areas. I would say the challenging area for me is really understanding zoning, and I would certainly rely on the team to help me decipher what the town or the board is trying to accomplish when it comes to some of the zoning language.
That could elude many of us. Follow up on that?
No, I'm good. Go ahead.
John?
Keep going.
Okay. So, I know as a neighbor working in Needham, you know that Westwood has undergone a lot of economic development in recent years. Phase 1 of a 3-year, $35 million redevelopment of Islington Center is nearing completion, and we also have 130 acres that make up University Station that have a few missing pieces yet to complete. Describe for us your economic development experience, and give us some specific examples of how you've attracted business growth that's appropriate for a community, and if you have any ideas regarding appropriate development for Westwood.
Okay. We in Needham took an approach where we were behind the wave of commercial development, and what was really, what the hinge was our zoning. So we had to catch up on our zoning. So we had a number of developers that came in and spoke to us on what we needed to do. I worked with the land use team, including our building commissioner, trying to identify different areas within the zoning that we could attack first, where we get the biggest bang for the buck, and also what was going to be accepted by the community as a whole. And we were successful in doing that. We have TripAdvisors now. We have a number of other commercial developments and economic development opportunities that are happening. The area that we're focusing right now is our downtown area, and trying to work on some mixed use, but also trying to get some different types of businesses in there. We have a lot of restaurants, which is great, but we're trying to identify some of the needs within the community to see if we can develop different areas. Chestnut Street is one of the other areas that our planning board is working on, working with the select board myself, the town manager, and the director of planning, trying to identify different parcels to redevelop. And we have a large project that's going on right now that we did make an attempt at town meeting for some rezoning. Got a little bit of pushback regarding that rezoning, so we're going to come back at it the next annual town meeting. And we have a great opportunity for some more development there. So my role is really working with the staff that works with the elected and appointed boards when it comes to zoning to try to identify different areas that can help improve the zoning, the marketing of the community. And as far as Westwood, you have a great history here. For being a community well-respected within the Commonwealth. You have University Station, which is huge, and I think that you have a great opportunity for some more commercial development. When I've driven around the community, I've seen that you have a split tax base, but I think the commercial development really could be an attractive piece. You have a lot of diversity at University Station. I was down there for a little while this afternoon, and I think that you have some potential to have some more diversity come in, some different types of development, but more commercial-based than residential-based.
Yeah. In terms of your zoning in Needham with your downtown, does anything provide for two-story yet, or is that, with residential
Yes.
above?
Yeah, so we have a development that's there. It's just not working the way we planned it to. So we have a number of different situations that we're working with. We have landlords who are not based in, some of them are not based in Massachusetts, makes it a little bit challenging trying to gather decision makers
You don't
together.
control the parcels
Yes.
as it always did. Yeah,
Exactly.
for sure. Follow-up?
I
Okay.
don't.
Okay. Switching gears to housing, well, not really, there was a segue there, I guess. Westwood has a large population of long-term residents, but its proximity to Boston and great schools have created a lot of opportunities for residential development. Please describe some examples of residential development, including senior and affordable housing projects you've played a role in developing, and you can add on to that where there have been challenges, because I believe Needham is only recently above the 10% threshold.
Yes,
On
in
affordable housing,
2018,
so
yes.
if you could speak to your experience in those areas of residential development.
So we've had a number of projects that, and we recently hit the 10% threshold back in 2018, just a year ago. But one of the things that we were working on, we had that development that I mentioned earlier where TripAdvisors is, on the other side of 128 going towards Newton. We had a 300-unit development built there, and that really started the ball rolling for us. We've worked with a number of developers trying to identify different parcels in Needham that would work for that large development, more of a friendly 40B than anything else. And right now, we are challenged with trying to keep our long-term residents, the ones who built the community up and supported the community to where it is today, in Needham. So we are looking at different ways of not so much affordable housing, but ADUs, so affordable dwelling units. So we're looking for more of like accessory apartments within their own homes or a wing off of their homes. And that's one of the challenges that we're faced with right now. We've had an opportunity to bring this towards town meeting. Town meeting is in much support of that. We just need to fine-tune the language that we're putting into the zoning so it can be a little more flexible, and town meeting is, like I said, in great support of that.
So have you already done units?
The ADUs?
Yes.
So the ADU language didn't pass at the last town meeting. It was, like I said, the language was a little bit too narrow. So we need to spread that out a little bit, and once we're able to do that, we'll bring that back to town meeting. And everyone who spoke at town meeting was in favor of it. They just were concerned with a little bit of the language, yes.
Okay, I'm going to do a scenario.
Okay.
And let you dissect it and tell us what you think.
All right.
Okay, so in conducting an inspection at an approved construction site, an inspector calls you to inform you that she has encountered an independent painting contractor who serves on the town board that issued the approval for the project. Okay, so the inspector tells you she has a contractor who served on a town board. What is the possible issue here, and what steps would you take to address it?
So the independent, I just want to make sure I understand this
Yep.
if I can. So the independent contractor currently serves on a town board.
Yeah,
Is it the board, is it a permitting board?
yes.
Okay.
Issued the approval
Issued
for
the
the
approval,
project,
okay.
yeah. And so now that contractor is at the site, at the construction site,
Okay.
on the town board, contractor on site.
Okay. I would go down to the site. I would speak to this board member, explain the conflict that this board member is putting the community in, because if certain documents haven't been filed with the town clerk, this person can't work there. So if he didn't have the proper disclosures, but more importantly, the fact that you're a part of the permitting group, it's a huge red flag. I would certainly get town council involved.
Wise move.
I'd call you on my way down. But that's a huge red flag. It really will take away from what the community has accomplished, not just with the permitting, but everything else, as far as the credibility and being transparent. So I would definitely speak with that person regarding the individual's involvement, and let town council talk about the legalese of the situation.
Okay. Any follow-up?
No.
You guys will let me know if there is, I'm sure. Okay.
No, we won't.
No, you won't. Shy and retreating.
I mean, I just think, for the public watching, we have spent 45 minutes each. So I think that's what's limiting some of the questions.
Okay, so communications and community engagement. Internal and external communication and citizen engagement has become increasingly important in municipalities. What do you see the role of the town administrator in addressing these issues? Why don't we start with that?
I would see the town administrator as leading the communication improvement efforts, increasing the communication, tearing down silos, or trying to help break down some of the silos that may exist, and really working with the team to let them know that the transparency and the communication, not just internally but externally, is crucial for advancement. So the more members of the community that understand what we're trying to accomplish, the smoother town meeting can go, and the smoother the approval can go.
And talk about citizen engagement.
Citizen engagement. So we have a number of things that we're currently exploring right now. We have a citizens university that we're going to be establishing in Needham. So I can't tell you the details of that yet.
Modeled after what other towns have done,
Yes,
isn't it?
very much
Lexington?
so. Lexington,
Is it big?
and there's been a few other communities that have
Sure.
been very successful in that. The concept of that is to really bring community to residents in so they can understand the operation that government has and the role that government has, and also to identify different opportunities for them to serve on different boards. And so we feel that we have a lot of turnover within the community. This is a great opportunity to really bring those individuals in to get them a greater understanding of what's happening. And also, not everyone can attend evening meetings. Not everyone's going to go to the website. Not everyone's going to stream. Great show, but not everyone's going to stream it.
You
So
got it.
this is another way of really getting people more engaged in the community, in local government, and also an opportunity for the staff to be exposed to some citizens that they may not be exposed to.
Taking a little bit further, and there might be some redundancy here, please give us examples of how you, Chris, communicate to both internal and external audiences in your current position. And do you have any unique ideas? You just mentioned one that is something Needham's doing. It's not unique, but it's new, that improve methods of communication in your current position or
Sure.
prior positions.
So
All about you as a communicator.
Okay. I prefer face-to-face communication. So I will go to what I call people's homes. I will go to their turf, whether it's a PTO, whether it's a touchdown club, or whether it's our veterans group, to talk about certain issues. I just feel it's going to them is a way of extending what I'm trying to do, and not have them go to a different meeting or an additional meeting. But face-to-face communication is something that I've pride myself on. It's something that I value. And I really think you can get a lot more out of looking someone in the eye versus sending an email or a text message. As far as different things that we're looking to do, we have an opportunity right now to be the first community in Massachusetts to work with this vendor who will provide us with real-time data. And what I mean by that is, you have a public hearing, and you have certain individuals that will come to the public hearing, they'll speak, and you have a lot of residents who may not have an opportunity to attend. This software will allow them, once they enroll, you send out information, you send out a survey, or you send out a question, and you can get real-time data back. So this is something that, right now, we will be the first town, should we move forward with this, in Massachusetts to work with this vendor, and we're really excited about that opportunity. And we're hoping that's going to happen within the next few months.
That's great.
I have a follow-up. So let's
Yeah, please.
ask about this then. So, Chris, if they're going to do that, right? So let's say that, I don't know, we'll pick a number. So let's say 20% of the population is really engaged, right? I mean,
Okay.
that's numbers most polls say, and our town clerk sitting in the back, if we get 20%, we're doing well, right?
Okay.
So how is that, how how are you going to get the other people, the other 80%, or to get engaged in, that type of activity? In other words, those 20% are going to be there, right? Those are the diehards. They vote, they get out and vote in the snow, and they might be even 80 years old. It's the other ones that we really need to get that communication out. So with the real-time data, is that really going to is it going to increase the population, or is it just going to keep the ones that are already probably more engaged, just more engaged?
Well, I think it will keep the ones who are engaged more engaged. But again, going to different venues, different meetings, sharing with the community some of the things that I'm about, some of the things I'm going to do, but also this opportunity. And to really just promote it. So you can really encourage individuals to sign up for this program. And then with this program, they can get on their smartphones, they can respond to different questions like I said, for public hearings if you have certain questions. And it's an opportunity for them to still participate without attending. I don't know if we will ever get to 100%, because you talked about 20 and 80, but the goal would be to increase that 20%.
Right.
And then how we would go about increasing that 20%. So if year one we went from 20 to 25, that's an improvement. Now how do we take it from 25 to 30 and 35 and things like that?
So because it's an app, would you try to, I was just thinking outside here, would you try to engage high school students like seniors, who are turning voting age and now get suddenly involved in town government through this app that they would never had before them?
Not just seniors. We would look at, we work with our superintendent and our principals very well, because if we can get the kids involved, they bring it home to mom and dad, and now mom and dad are involved because this is something that their child's bringing home. So we definitely work with our schools, and they have a great network of new residents that are coming in who may be interested in local government, or maybe not understand, maybe coming from a different state or a different form of government, not understanding how Westwood operates. So this would be a great opportunity to reach out to them as well, and then we would use that network as well.
Thanks.
Chris, to the extent that you can, because I don't want you to violate any confidentiality, describe the role you played in resolving a challenging union-related matter.
So as the director of HR, when I first joined Needham, I was the assistant director, assistant town manager and director of human resources, and I now oversee HR. We have a dedicated HR director. I have been intimately involved with labor relations since I went to Needham, since I joined the town. And again, I go about it the same way. I treat everyone, I listen, I treat people with respect, and my goal is to be as fair as possible to everybody. I don't play favorites, I don't play titles, and I believe I've earned the respect of my coworkers, both non-represented and represented. When situations come up, they know that I will be open-minded, I'll be fair, and I try to find a resolution that's going to be a win-win for both sides.
Can you describe some time when that hasn't gone well? It's been particularly challenging, and you're on the problem-solving end of getting to yes?
We had a significant labor issue with a particular employee that resulted in both local and state officials getting involved. And it was a matter that clearly was not going to be resolved with training or counseling, that we were going to have some form of separation with that employee. So working with that employee's representative, working with the union, and also working with Labor Council, we developed a plan for that employee to separate the
So were you
employee.
partnering with the HR director on that?
HR
Or
director.
you probably brought a few
yes.
people in?
The HR director, Labor Council, and the town manager.
Yeah, okay.
Develop an exit strategy.
I'm sorry?
To develop the exit strategy.
We developed a plan.
How to get the resolution, yeah.
What is the management committee made up of? Are you the chair? Who's chairs when you're doing the negotiations?
So the town manager is the chief negotiator,
Okay.
and I'm second chair.
Okay.
Drawing on any of the positions you've held over the course of your career, where have you been most effectively to apply a strategic approach to solving a problem? So really the essence is your strategic experience in looking at something and getting it to a conclusion.
So for maybe 6 years prior to this happening, we were trying to develop a health and human services department. We had a public health department, we had a council on aging department or aging services, youth and family services, and veterans. And without creating an additional FTE, we were trying to figure out who, with the personality and the management style, that would be best to lead this one department of health and human services. So we had a number of different opportunities to try to take advantage of this, but I didn't feel we had the right people in the right positions at the time, and it wasn't the right time for the community. So I made that statement to the town manager. We worked together. I got her support, and we waited it out a little bit. We had some turnover that happened. We hired different people with a different way of looking at things. We had great people, don't get me wrong. We just were going in a different direction, and we just needed a different view and a different outlook on how we were going to help move the community forward or move these departments forward. We hired the people in place, and then from there, I waited 6 months, made an evaluation, made a recommendation, and then we were able to promote one person to the Director of Health and Human Resources. So from an
Start to
internal...
finish? How long
From start
does
to
it-
finish.
How long did that take?
It was about 6 years.
Oh, 6 years,
Yes,
what you
it
mentioned
was
earlier.
a long vision.
Interesting. Well, sometimes that's what it takes. Okay. Any other questions that people have? I've tried to cover a variety of different topics. You good? Any others? Yep. There's one coming.
So I wrote down this long one, but so let me just ask, so I'm going to not look at my notes and try to go from my
Okay.
memory. So how do you think, Chris, you would handle personality conflicts that arise, well, either within the department or within a mini department or between supervisors? In other words, you're the top guy. If you get this job, you would be the top guy, right? What is your style on trying to handle the personality conflicts that arise?
I listen. Like I said, I go about it regardless of title. I don't go in with any preconceived notions or decisions on, well, I like this person better, I work with this person better. I listen to the situation, and I work with the individuals involved to try to come up with a resolution. Sometimes I'm successful with that, and sometimes I'm not. Sometimes we have individuals who, for use of a better phrase, they no longer should be on the bus. Maybe what they need is a different place of employment, and I have that conversation with people when needed. And sometimes they agree and sometimes they don't. We really try to coach people and to try to identify if there are ways we can keep, because we find our people very valuable, but sometimes people need just to move on. And having that difficult conversation, I'm not afraid to have it. I've had those types of conversations, and I'm sure I'll continue to have those types of conversations. But again, we first look at coaching, training, listening, and discussing the situation. Because there are times when conflict is really just a misunderstanding. And it's a misunderstanding that has just gone for years. And once you're able to identify what that core issue is, then you're better able to try to help the people resolve the matter.
So,
Follow up.
Chris.
I see the follow up on your
Fine.
face.
No, I'm going to switch gears.
All right.
I'm going to give you a chance to do your wrap-up.
Okay.
Tell us what you want us to know that we might not already know, and anything else you want to reaffirm.
Okay. I have, like I said earlier, I've been working in local government in Massachusetts for 25 years. I've progressed through different responsibilities in different communities. So I come to you working in 4 different communities in 4 different roles. I've worked actively in our professional development and our associations both in Massachusetts and outside of Massachusetts. I have a network of people and sources that I can rely on. I'm one of those resources that others can rely on when they have to seek guidance or advice on certain matters, and I would bring that to you. I'm eager to be a town administrator. I would consider I'm early in my career, and I'm someone who prefers to stay in a community. Like I said, I've been in Needham for 14 years. Prior to that, I was in Lincoln for 6.5. So I'm not someone who jumps around. I'm someone who wants to get settled, get down, help out the community, advance the goals and the community forward.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
for being interested in Westwood, and we'll be back in touch.
I appreciate it. Thank you very
Okay.
much. Best of luck with your search.
Thank you, Chris. It was a pleasure.
Pleasure meeting with you.
I'm going to take a 5-minute break, or is
No,
Pam
he's
here?
he's coming right back. It's
Yeah.
okay.
You put us on commercial? Commercial break?
No. Hello, Ms. Dukeman.
You know this candidate?
I think we do. It's great to have you here, Pam. John's coming right back, so he told me we could go ahead and get started.
Okay.
So, you know us a little bit already, but welcome to the Select Board meeting where we're interviewing the candidates. I'd like to start by giving you a chance to give an overview. You know, I'm actually going to ask you to wait. I know he's going to be back shortly, but it's not fair if he's not here while you're doing that. So, yeah, it just wouldn't be. We'll jump in a second. Okay. We pressed the whole button, so we're waiting for you. Okay. Please start by introducing yourself or give a brief overview, and then we'll get into a presentation and some Q&A and a wrap-up for you at the end.
Sounds great. Thank you for having me in. I appreciate the opportunity to interview for the town administrator position. My name is Pam Dukeman. I'm interviewing for this and feel I could do a great job for the town in this role. I have been personally and professionally invested in the town for a number of years. I've been a town resident for 22 years, raised my children in the community. I feel, I know what brings people to Westwood, what they want from Westwood, because it's my story too. People come for great schools, they want good services, they want an excellent quality of life, they want pride in the community they live in, and I feel like Westwood delivers on that. It's a hidden jewel in the state. I've worked for the town for 28 years, working out of the Select Board's office. I have served as finance director for 26 years, also served as assistant town administrator and acting town administrator in Mike Gillette's absence. I've been fully involved in all of the changes and accomplishments that have occurred in town government over a 28-year period. New school buildings, new municipal facilities, changes in town government. When I first started, there was not a finance director or a finance department. There was not an HR director. There was not a DPW department or a DPW director. That's how long I've kind of been at this. But I'm really proud of the work that I've been able to do over that time period. And I think consistently throughout my work in Westwood, I've shown my ability to work cooperatively with lots of different groups. I'm a hard worker. I'm able to kind of get things done. I take pride, again, in kind of what we've been able to achieve as a community over that time period. And I would love the opportunity to kind of help lead Westwood over the next horizon of new enhancements coming forward.
Great, thank you. So we asked each of our candidates to make a brief presentation. We've allocated 7 minutes for that. It's a hard stop at 7 minutes because we want time to ask more questions or to follow up on that. Sure. We have in the past heard from you on presentations, but tonight it's as the candidates. So
sure.
I'll turn it back to you to make a presentation.
Sure. I just have a few brief slides. And I just chose to highlight some work I've done on the aid to the elderly and disabled tax fund in Westwood. So I pulled a few slides about that. As the board is aware, that fund was established in 1999 by town meeting vote to accept that state statute. And the purpose is to help assist elderly and disabled residents with their property tax bills, with the goal of helping them to remain in the community. And it's really to help those residents remain in town and also to help, in a sense, slow the turnover of housing stock to a bit of a degree. It recognizes that in a community like Westwood, as it becomes a more attractive community, new residents come in, want more services, particularly with the schools, that the tax bill can rise exponentially and really puts at risk that resident who has lived in the town for many, many years. There's a full committee in place who works on that fund, the distribution and collection of revenue. I asked the board to appoint me to that in FY09 because I felt like I could add to the work that the people on the committee had already done. The typical recipient in Westwood is about 88 years old and has lived in Westwood for 60 years. So those are the types of people that we're trying to reach. So some of my initiatives with that fund when I came on in 2009, I started working with the committee to have an insert in our annual tax bill. We actually put it in each quarter. And we really wanted to be transparent about what the fund was doing. So that insert describes who are the recipients of the fund, what are the goals, how much is raised each year. We're trying to give more information so that people are aware of what we're doing and what the purpose is. It's also an outreach effort. We include in that insert information on how to either apply or suggest to a neighbor to apply to the fund, and how to donate. The other thing I did getting on the committee was to start soliciting donations through an annual appeal letter in the fall. As a resident, I had been receiving every fall appeal letters from some of the other charities in town. They kind of come out right after the school year comes back. And I thought that would be a good vehicle for the aid to the elderly. And it has proved very successful. So again, we distribute a letter each fall that gives very specific information about the fund, the intent, how much is coming in and out. And again, information on how to either apply or to send in donations. And through that appeal letter, the committee was able to double the donations from about $25,000 a year to $50,000 a year. And then finally, working with the committee, we saw that we had about the same amount of recipients each year. And after some different research and outreach, we felt good that we were reaching about the right amount of people, about 40 residents a year. Each year there are some people who kind of age out of the program, either pass on or move out of town or go to a nursing home, and there's always a few more who come on. So we felt good that about 40 was the right number. However, we felt like we needed to do more to each of those residents. As the tax bill kept rising, the amount we were able to give them was smaller and smaller as a percent of their total tax bill. So worked with the committee to attain the ability to have town meeting appropriate funds into the account. Up until that point, by state law, you could only put money into that account by donation. So worked on that, make the presentation at town meeting. The May 2016 town meeting approved that initiative, and subsequently the state legislature approved it. It was a home rule petition in December 16. So that meant that now Westwood could add funds from our general fund budget to this account. As the board may recall, that was an interesting discussion at that town meeting. It wasn't a unanimous kind of overall vote for the program. It's difficult to kind of talk about people in need sometimes at a general public session like that. But we did get the state approval to be able to appropriate funds. Westwood is the only community in the state currently doing that. But after hearing the town discussion, my initiative on behalf of the committee was to ask the select board to match the donations to the funds. So we really were trying to be respectful of the town meeting discussion, be respectful of the use of funds. By asking for a match, it still put the burden on the committee to go out and get donations each year. It seemed like a reasonable amount to ask the select board for that. And so we've done that now in FY 18 and 19. The select board has matched about $50,000 a year into the account. I also made the suggestion that we don't go back to town meeting each year for that appropriation, or use our meals tax or something else that would cause more discussion every year at town meeting. A streamlined method was to have the select board make that transfer out of your reserve account. So it happens in public session, but it doesn't take up the time at town meeting. So for each of the last 2 years, select board has matched about $50,000 to the $50,000 in donations. The committee now has $100,000 to distribute to the recipients. Again, we're distributing it to about the same number of recipients, but we've been able to increase the amount they each get to about $2,500. And that's about 25% of the average tax bill in Westwood. So we're certainly not solving all of their financial problems, but we're making a significant effort towards that real estate tax bill, and it goes directly toward their tax bill. And finally, I've just on the last page included some of the comments we get back. Each year we get back some comments from some of the recipients. I just want to highlight a couple of things. One of the quotes, Westwood, my home for 41 years, is a wonderful, caring community. Thank you so much for caring about me. Another one, I truly appreciate your very generous help. Westwood has been a wonderful town to live in, and I hope I can manage to stay here in my home. One more, Westwood has been such a wonderful town to raise our family over the past 50 years. I could not imagine living elsewhere. And I included those and kind of picked this program only because I think it highlights one of the special things about Westwood as a community. It's a very caring community. People want to retain a small town feel to the community, even as the community grows and changes. I think this program's a great example of that. The town has many other nonprofit organizations who help out in town. The I Am Strong Foundation, the Community Chest, the Westwood Cares, all of those. And I think this was a way for the town to kind of participate in that same effort. And I think the comments show back. It's not even just the financial receipts that the recipients get, but that feeling that Westwood cares about them. So I'm proud of the work that I've been able to do on that.
Great.
With some of the changes and initiating it, the way we have the selectmen voted, and the results that we've seen.
Terrific. Any follow-up questions on that?
I guess if you could just provide some examples or really like leadership styles that evolved when you went from being the finance director to the assistant town manager. In your experience, what leadership qualities grew as a result of that or evolved over time that brought you there? What are the concrete changes in your role that occurred?
When I'm serving as, sure, when I first came to Westwood, I was the budget analyst, and we had no consolidated finance department or no coordinated effort with those departments. After 2 years, the select board at the time put forth the description for a finance director to town meeting. That was approved. We didn't make any changes to any of the elected or appointed officials in place or adopt a consolidated finance department. That didn't occur until really only a few years ago when the town had a charter change. And so in that role, I had to step up from the budget analyst to now being in charge of the finance team. I had to work collaboratively with all of the departments, accounting, treasurer, collector, and assessors. Many of those departments still to this day have elected officials in various roles. It was a big change for those departments to work cooperatively. I had to show them that together we would be a better team than individual departments working discreetly. Some of the departments at the time did not want to participate in that process or thought with me taking that role that it would be the select board taking over their departments. So I had to work and show them that wasn't going to be the case. We have a very strong team now. I'm very proud of that. We hold monthly team meetings. We have a lot of integrated work between all those departments. Similar to when I'm serving as the assistant town administrator, I've acted many times in Mike Gillette's absence, when he's on vacation or when he's out of the country on some ICMA work. I'm put in charge. In that role, I have to deal with whatever might come up. Some examples that have happened over the years. One year I was in that role when we had a hurricane watch, and I had to pull together the WEMA team. So that's involving, leading the public safety departments, DPW, the health department. Learned a lot during that process. Was lucky that at the end of the week the hurricane turned away and we didn't have to put things into place, but a lot of that. I also serve in that role just on a daily basis in Mike's absence if he's at a meeting or a seminar. If someone's coming into town hall, a resident to seek help or complain about a service, or if a department head needs some immediate attention, they're sent over to my office. So I think in that role, I've shown that I can work collaboratively with all departments. I know how to step up, even if it's something that I haven't worked on before, like the WEMA example. So I think, over my career here in Westwood, I've shown I'm always professional, always prepared. I'm a planner, I'm a strategic planner. I kind of don't leave things to the last minute. I'm always ready ahead of schedule. I'm always collaborating and communicating with whoever needs to be involved on the issue I'm working with. Thank you.
So regarding this under the category of management skills, being a town administrator requires knowledge and skills in many areas: finance, personnel management, land use, collective bargaining, etc. In what areas of municipal management are you the strongest? And what areas might you have less experience or expertise and need to rely more on staff when you're in the role of town administrator?
So, I think just from my daily work, my finance area is the strongest. I've done 28 budgets over the years, which is a difficult thing to do under Prop 2.5, as well as many of the other financial tasks, setting the tax rate, doing the commercial residential tax split, overseeing the annual audit process, all of those things. I also, when I mentioned that I've been with the town through many changes, before we had a human resource department, I did many of those functions. I served on the collective bargaining team. I was involved in the hiring process. I still am now for finance roles, but I was involved broader than that. I served as the town's representative on the West Suburban Health Group and participated in the plan design for health insurance. So I think I have a lot of skills in the human resource area. I would say that land use and development is the area that I would rely more strongly on staff. I've certainly been a participant in many of the different development issues coming forth from the town, but probably more so on the backside, the finance side. Reviewing TIF agreements, reviewing the commercial, residential impact to the tax rate, that type of thing.
Okay, and maybe just talk about your philosophy or your approach. Land use questions come up. What's the team you think you should bring together, or how would you deal with it? Is it discussion with individuals, a project team? What do you think about how you approach things like that?
Yeah, I do think the team approach is best. As I mentioned, that's how I work with my finance team. I try to make sure that everyone on the team knows what our issue is. We can get the best result that way. People can participate. So I do think the land use that we have in place, the team, with all of those departments involved in that, certainly relying more so now with Nora in the Community and Economic Development Director role. But I do think the team approach to make sure that everyone is kind of seeing a project early on, can weigh in, help get that project along, help get a good project for the town versus kind of individually having those departments handle that.
Okay. With regard to economic development, we've gone through a lot. And phase one of the 3-year, $35 million redevelopment in Islington Center is well underway. Well, phase one is nearing completion. We have phases 2 and 3. We have University Station, and that in its final stages of development of the 130 acres with more opportunity on University Avenue. So describe your economic development expertise with specific examples of your role in attracting business growth that's appropriate for a community, and do you have any ideas regarding appropriate economic development going forward for Westwood?
Yeah. Again, for a lot of the economic development in Westwood, I've been there since the beginning. When I first came to Westwood in 1991, one of my first assignments within weeks of being hired as the budget analyst was working on that classification, the tax rate, commercial residential split. Because in 91 is when the original University Ave project, all of the warehouses and such kind of, collapsed and went vacant, and we had a huge impact on the residential taxes. So I've participated all along the way since then, again, more in the back role. What I've tried to do is make sure in the way I can support those projects coming forward to the town. So as the board is aware, I do a presentation each year at town meeting to outline what the financial articles will be that the town meeting members are voting on, and I use that time to get an overall view of the town's finances. Sometimes people think that's the same presentation every year, but it's not. I kind of pick and choose depending on what might be presented to town meeting. If we're going to be talking about borrowing articles, I'll look at debt slides. But in the years when we were really bringing on the commercial development in the University Station, I really tried to get the town to understand the value of the commercial tax dollars to the community. Not only additional tax dollars, but with that split tax rate, how that could help the community. So I feel that I participated by kind of setting up the table to have people understand why those projects were important. So that is certainly the area where I would have the most to learn and to grow. But I feel that, my involvement in the background over the years wouldn't allow that to be, wouldn't make that a hard.
So where do you see opportunities ahead?
Well, there's been great work done, and what we have, I think it's the continuation of, kind of the softer services for the town. I know people in town are continuing to look for the restaurants, the stores that they can go to. As a resident in town, I know a lot of times I'm going outside of town to kind of get some of those services, and people would love to have more of those within the community. So they're not looking for huge commercial development. We're nearing the end of the opportunity for that, but they are looking for the services that they can partake of. Again, different kinds of restaurants, shopping, entertainment. Not appropriate entertainment.
Or within the boundaries.
Or within.
Okay, Westwood has a large population of long-term residents, but its proximity to Boston and great schools continues to create lots of opportunities for further residential development. Please describe some examples of residential development, including senior and affordable housing projects that you may have played a role in developing. So, in the context that you've been working in.
Yeah, I'd say that's similar. That the different projects that have come forth, it's been my role to help on the finance side with those different projects. And again, because of the length of my time here, I've been, kind of way back on some of those initial housing initiatives the town had. Chase Estates, Cedar Hill Estates, that type of thing. Those were the original kind of affordable housing opportunities. I think the town needs to continue to offer the different housing. The over 55 opportunities and the different housing stock, the townhouses. There's certainly a need for that in the community.
Why don't you give a picture of the lens you look at through the assessment side of it, the Board of Assessors, and what housing, it fits into the conversation of the assessment process?
So when we, looking at that, and each year we're trying to look at, we need to retain the commercial value. Mm-hmm. We have such a delicate split rate, as the board knows, and such a desirable residential value that we're in a sense always chasing to keep, just even to maintain the split rate we have. So I think when the board is looking, or I'm being asked to look, we're trying to see what would help the split, and certainly the mixed-use components help that more than a pure residential. So it's that type of analysis. I think it's trying to look at the timing of when projects come online. We had some issues with that with the University Station project, where the residential came on first. So it replaced current commercial value before we had new commercial value growth, issues like that.
Mm-hmm. So, big topic for this board and the community is communications. Internal and external communication and citizen engagement has become increasingly important for us and other municipalities in the Commonwealth. What do you see as the role of the town administrator in addressing communication and communication-related issues?
Yeah, I think communication is a very important issue for the town. I feel I have extremely strong communication skills. I actually have my undergrad degree in communication as well as finance, and I feel like I've displayed my communication skills throughout my years with the town, through my public presentations on the budget, through my presentations at town meeting, and through written communications from different material. I feel the town administrator's role is to make sure that the residents know what's happening, that the select board is kept apprised. I think there are so many different venues for communication now. I think the town does very well in some of those avenues, and we have areas to improve. I think we do very well in some of our larger communication efforts. So our town meeting book is very well done by the Finance Commission, very professional. Our quarterly newsletter has a lot of great information, and I know people love to get that. The Westwood Wire consolidates a lot of information and gets that out. I think we can improve in a number of areas, and as town administrator, I would get these goals in place. I think it's in the shorter, quicker communications, the Twitter and the Instagram. I think a lot of people are used to that now, and I don't think we're as advanced there as we could be. I do think that we should be hiring a communications information officer, as other towns have done. And I think we need to just keep thinking of kind of the short ways that we can help inform residents. I know an issue the last couple of years has been residents who have never attended a town meeting before, not really understanding that process. So how do we get them information to know what to expect at town meeting, or in that run-up cycle to town meeting? What happens to an article? What's the process it has to go through? And again, I think sometimes our efforts towards that are to develop long manuals, which are something that can sit on the website, but I think we need to do shorter, quicker things. Quick little graphic slides that say, here's how a petition article arrives, and here's the process it's going to go through, and just have those available to try to get out to people, especially new people, as they come into the process.
Okay. A couple more questions. To the extent you can, and we don't want you to violate any confidentiality, describe the role you played in resolving a challenging union-related matter. Bargaining, collective bargaining, personnel matter in the union.
Well, I have, over my years here, just been a couple of occasions where we have had to, terminate an employee, and when they're in a union, that can have a different process in place. So I've been through that cycle and know how to work within the parameters of the union agreement and work with the HR department to make that happen. We've had a couple of, we've been in some good years economically recently, but we've certainly had periods where that's been a different case. We had, I believe it was FY10, FY11, where we had 0 increases in the budget to school and municipal for 2 years in a row. Very difficult. We actually, at that point, I was involved in the process, went back to our unions and asked them to help participate in that budget difficulty and help us get through a difficult period. And we had varying results, but we did have some unions who were able to work with us and help restructure their contracts to help us kind of get through that timeline.
Okay. You've been at the town for a long time, so I won't ask about drawing on positions you've had over the years, but over your career, where have you been able to most effectively apply a strategic approach to problem solving? So you knew you wanted to get somewhere down there, and you're way here. What's the strategic approach you used to get to where you wanted to be?
Well, I do think that is probably in my work with the budget process here in Westwood. We've certainly, been able to accomplish quite a bit over the last, especially 10-year period, as far as major new buildings. This facility, a new fire station, a new library. That's difficult to do within the parameters of Proposition 2.5. And I feel that I've really helped laid out good timeframes for those projects, knowing, looking at debt cycles and when things drop off, and planning and pointing out that this would really fit better 3 years from now. Can we do this planning here, and then let's try to get our final votes at a different point. So I feel like I'm always kind of doing that planning when I'm working with, how are we going to accomplish what we need to, both in the operating and capital budget.
Okay, other questions? Go ahead.
Okay, so Pam, so obviously you've been with the town for a long time. And so what do you see, there are obviously great advantages to that, but what do you see as the biggest disadvantage if you were to take over this role?
Yep.
And this is a question only you can answer because the
Sure.
other 3 candidates can't answer this.
Yeah, I think it would just be a perception that people think it would just kind of be status quo. And I could tell you it would not be. I would really, I've been serving essentially in your number 2 role in the Select Board's office for a number of years. But I would take this as an opportunity to step up, and I would bring my own my own ideas and my own initiatives to the town administrator's role. So I would think there'd be a perception maybe that people think things would just stay as they always are as far as, communication or outreach or how the town administrator's office works. But, I'm a different person than Mike. Mike's kind of had his role. I work differently, and I really would be stepping up and bringing in new ideas and new initiatives and new methods of kind of getting the town's business done.
Okay, thank you.
John, anything?
But I guess I'd ask you to follow up on that. I mean, put a little flavor on new initiatives, new ideas. So you've been sitting in the number 2 role, and I'm sure you've had the thought of, if I was number 1, I would do X. So what are those things?
Yep. Well, for me, I think the biggest thing, the biggest item on the town's agenda over the next year is the school building project. And I say that not only because it's a big project and a large dollar, but I think because of the specifics of the project, it has the opportunity to fray the community. And I think it's really important that that project comes out in a positive way, that as the community goes through the discussion on the siting of that school, that it's a positive project for the town. And I think once that goes through its review process, it really is going to set the community up for the next 10 years. So there are a lot of exciting projects out there that are kind of waiting for the decision on that school project to get done. I think once we have the siting on that project, it frees up what could be next for other municipal facilities. What about additional athletic facilities, recreational opportunities? Those are there and kind of pent up and ready to go. And so I think that would be a great initiative. I also think, as we talked, that there could be, much more kind of involvement with other groups in town and the communication. I'd love to see kind of more outreach, get new people involved in some of our various boards. I would, as town administrator, kind of do what I've seen in other communities, where they go out and kind of have established coffee with the administrator or coffee with town staff out at different places around town. That's something I'd be excited to take on. I'd also love to help participate in some of the new housing initiatives coming to the town. I've seen in other towns different public-private initiatives that have housing for town employees. I think it would be an excellent opportunity if we could have some kind of housing for our teachers, police, and fire staff. I think that helps keep them within the community and would be something to look forward to.
How about with the town staff, senior management? There's a certain sort of style in place. What's your thought on how you would work with your senior managers?
Yeah, I think, they would see how I currently handle the finance staff, which is I really have it be my role to help make them the best they can be. So I'm helping them be better customer service to the community, help them be involved in all aspects of what we're doing, try to help them serve the community in the best way they could. So that would be my same approach with our senior staff, the fire chief, police chief, DPW director, helping them achieve the selectmen's goals for what they want happening in town and helping those departments do their best work for the community.
Okay.
That includes the town clerk?
Of course, the town clerk.
Pam, how about a wrap-up for you? Anything you'd like to say in conclusion? Anything that you want to reaffirm or anything that hasn't
Sure.
been touched on that you'd like to cover?
No, again, I appreciate the opportunity to interview for the role, and I can assure you I would not be applying for the position if I didn't think I could do a terrific job for the town in that role. I certainly would take on the role as a step up. I would not be looking to just maintain the status quo, but I would be looking to kind of build on the work I've done to date for the town and help the board and the town as they go forward with the next enhancements for the community. Again, I'm very invested in the community. I love this town, and I'd love to be a part of kind of the next wave of accomplishments that the town will be putting up.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, we are going to take, how much time do we have until the next candidate? We're a little ahead of schedule? Yeah, how about we take a 10-minute break? We'll take a break on the Westwood Media Center, and we'll be back at 6:20. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. We're good?
We're good.
Okay, thank you. Welcome back to the Select Board meeting, and I'm happy to welcome our next candidate for this evening. Carl, welcome to join us. Thank you. Let's see. Carl Kilduff is with us. He hails from Connecticut most recently, and we'll start off with you giving a bit of an overview of yourself, anything you'd like to comment on, and then go into a presentation that you've been asked to make for us, which will be about a 7-minute time period. We'd like to stop at 7 minutes so we can get into further Q&A.
All right.
And allow you to do a wrap-up at the end. So again, welcome, and I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. By way of background, aside from state, my entire professional experience has been driven by work in public service. So I've always been in municipal government. My goal early in my career was to be a town manager. That adventure took me to Western Pennsylvania first to work for a fiscally distressed municipality. I'm happy to report that during my time there, we became a model for fiscal recovery under the state's Act 47 program and recognized by the governor of the Commonwealth for that purpose. Unfortunately, it was not a sustainable recovery and improvement. After my departure, the city went back from being in the black to being in the red and continued some poor habits. Continued my career going back to Connecticut for North Branford, Connecticut, which is a suburb of New Haven. Had a long career there, helping facilitate growth in that community, trying to work on community identity for a community which was really identified by two separate poles with a wide swath of green land in the middle, and those two poles not really working. So there's strong community identities based on the northern and southern end of town. It also involved a heavy regional emphasis. There is no county level government in Connecticut, so I represented the town on the Regional Metropolitan Transit Planning Board, helped the Department of Transportation determine how grants were awarded for transportation improvements, as well as some regional economic development activities. Left North Branford to go pursue opportunities in Darien, Connecticut, which is a bedroom community to New York City off of the Metro-North rail line. Put almost 8 years in Darien, working on a number of challenges for that community, and then ultimately left there to serve as executive director for the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority, which is a state-level position involved in finance of affordable housing, and gave me exposure to a level of finance that you would never get exposed to at the local level, dealing with bonds that local governments don't normally address, managing tax credit programs and the like. All of those different experiences and different approaches give me a skill set to be able to navigate some of the challenges that Westwood is currently facing, and provide sort of a wealth of experience for how other places have done things, other approaches where that may be of value to this community as it tries to move forward.
Great, okay. I would like to ask you to make your presentation, and I think we might have had a handout from you, or no?
Yes, I provided a strategic plan that was put together for the Darien Senior Center and became a document to support a capital investment in the Senior Center program. The facility as it existed prior to that was put in a former elementary school with minimal investment in order to make it available for the seniors to have a program. It was really not a well-conceived design. The space was not conducive to how the seniors were using it. They were happy to have it as a home, but it really didn't work well for a program. The program was faltering. There was a retirement of the senior center director. We were lucky enough to attract a very capable individual who had a vision for what the program could be. The building had outlived its usefulness. It was collapsing around our ears. the maintenance cost in and of itself is a significant drag on the budget, and it required a capital investment. There was a political discussion over the location of the senior center, and should it be this building or should it be that building? What we tried to take in that document is to focus on the need, define the program, define the potential of what could exist at there, and that the senior center is not necessarily what people had seen in the past, that there was an opportunity for growth and improvement. There was a demographic shift changing in the community where you had longer-lived seniors who were looking for more assistance. There was caregiver support that was growing as a demand. So there was enough additional opportunities, as well as trying to capture what we were coining as the near senior. The individual who was not 65 quite yet, perhaps could take advantage of the additional programming that was there, and you could expand the base of what you were providing for the community. So we try to focus not on the political issue, but on the defining the need, defining the value of the program, what it could mean in the future. That was presented to the Board of Selectmen. It became a document that was also went to the Board of Finance and part of a large packet of a major capital investment that went to Darien's representative town meeting, which is a 100-member legislative body for the community. The outcome, the project was funded, which was always a good outcome. It was a big vote of support for the senior community. The seniors were deeply appreciative of the investment that was going to be made to give them a new home. There was an acknowledgement that the old home really needed to reach its end, and it was not serving anybody well. The numbers that we projected, that there was going to be growth, we were hitting those numbers for growth. We were getting new membership, new enrollments, new program opportunities. The near seniors were coming in. So it was really a home run the whole way around of what we were able to reach and who we were able to serve as a member of the community. In terms of lessons learned for that project, trying to navigate that very narrow path of a political battle over where the site should be, and keeping staff pointed not on the politics of it, but on the need of the program and what it could look like. And that argument was really a challenge without not getting pulled to one side or to the other side. I don't think we fully appreciated when we started down the path of dialogue and decision-making the consequences of what public debate would mean to the end user. The seniors were very concerned about whether something was going to happen, whether there was going to be investment, non-investment. Well, maybe we should just be happy with what we have. Once that started to got feedback like that out of the senior center director, Parks and Rec and director and myself, and I put the senior center under Parks and Rec for programming support. The two of us engaged the seniors more. We were hanging out at the senior center to engage them in a dialogue and to provide some degree of reassurance that a project's going to happen. Everyone is working towards that end. Everybody is appreciative of what this is as a community amenity. And we're trying to fight a fight based on what the need is and what the potential can be. So it was, I think, ultimately turned into a positive that we had that level of interaction. I don't think we appreciated going into it how much of that additional support was going to be required to get the comfort level up, just because some of the politics of it maybe became a little more nastier than we expected, letters to the editor and things like that. But
all that good stuff. So you were talking about explaining things to the seniors. What was part of your approach to getting support leading up to town meeting? If you have 100 elected members, what was the approach and the strategy there?
the seniors were supportive. It was trying to get the members of the representative town meeting to understand what we were trying to articulate. So the RTM was broken up into a series of committees. So it was really who was going to be the primary committee and then who was going to be the secondary. So the way the RTM works is the primary board or committee makes its recommendation, secondary makes its recommendation, and it becomes a vote for the whole board. Parks and Rec committee didn't want to touch this, so they wanted to be secondary. The finance subgroup wanted to be primary and was trying to educate them on the financial impact of it, the drain on the operating budget of the current building. You needed to make an investment. There were questions about...
In representative town meeting, they were advocating to others. Is that what I'm understanding?
Representative town meeting advocates to themselves,
Yeah,
correct?
okay.
Correct.
Because we don't have that, so that's a different thing. But
It's a different
you
model.
were involved throughout.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. On to some questions. Being a town administrator, as you know, requires knowledge and skills in a variety of areas: finance, personnel, management, land use, collective bargaining, etc. In what areas of municipal management do you find you are strongest? In what areas do you have less experience or expertise where you need to rely on members of your staff?
Based on the variety of experiences I've had, I have a pretty broad depth of knowledge. The area that I enjoy the most is perhaps strategic planning and physical planning and working on organization development issues. I've been the lead negotiator on any number of collective bargaining contracts and pension adjustments, dealing with grievances. It's an area that I have done, and I have done very well. It's just not necessarily an area I terribly enjoy. And I've navigated that path either being without an HR director, which was the case in Pennsylvania and in North Branford, or with an HR director when I was in
You had to
Darien.
wear the HR hat yourself?
I had to wear
others?
the HR hat. I wore a lot of hats when I was in Pennsylvania. It's how you find that path forward and trying to get to something that works. So I've done it. I can do it. It's something that I would prefer to have someone else take the lead on, but it's something that I can do, and I can do very well. Economic development, it's really a matter of what does that look like in this community, what's the community consensus, and how do we move forward. Westwood's got a lot going for it that's positive from an economic development standpoint. The experience at CHFA was a lot of public-private partnerships and direct interactions with the development community on a housing basis and what their mindset is. I've done cluster-type redevelopment and focus on clusters as an economic development strategy at the local level, trying to build a network in terms of what's available in town as well as what's available in the region to have a more sustainable economic development base. So I really have
Covered a lot,
I
yes.
covered a lot of areas. There isn't any area that I can't do. It's just a matter of which area would I prefer.
So on leveraging off the conversation about economic development, we've had a lot going on here, as you've noted, in phase one of our three-year, $35 million Islington Center development. Phase one is nearing completion. And University Station, our mixed-use development, continues to grow with a little bit left to finish that off. So tell us a little bit more about your economic development experience, maybe in Darien. Let's go with that. And specific examples of how you've attracted appropriate business and economic development to the community.
My experience with economic development is it's transactional. So in some ways, the community is both a destination in and of itself as an attractant, and the community is also the commodity that's being sold and attracting interest from the development community. Darien was an area where economic development came somewhat easily. There was a strong interest in the community, strong interest in redeveloping underutilized sites and building off of the primary commercial corridors, which was Interstate 95 and the Post Road. Getting those properties to higher and better use was sort of the perennial challenge, and there wasn't so much of an effort to attract, just create an environment that allows for economic development to take place. So it was more of a zoning issue, focusing in on parking ratios and things of that nature for what is required to support a reuse of a given site. Assemblage was a challenge given the small parcels and a number of property owners, but that's not something the municipality was involved in. It was a matter of quietly behind the scenes assemblage took place, and we were responding to what their ultimate desires were. North Branford was economic development focused on business visitations and building a level of understanding and support for the existing business base, what their needs were, whether their issues were local or state-driven, who their suppliers were, who their relationships were with, were they suppliers in-state, out-of-state, to understand how we could target our attraction to bring in people that would be complementary and supportive of the existing business base. So in addition to business visitation, we reached out to commercial real estate agents to make sure that they understood what the town had on offer, what some commercial real estate sites were, what the existing business mix were, and ideas of the types of businesses we wanted to see coming in that would be complementary.
Let me guess,
to
you
what we
did
had.
not have an economic development director.
Did not have an economic
You did it all.
development. I had to do that also.
Okay. What do you have for ideas regarding future economic development in Westwood?
My perspective on Westwood is perhaps more limited than the prior town administrator. You've got a lot going on over at University Station.
Mm-hmm.
There's a different feel in the other two commercial hubs of Ilsington Center and High Street, which speak to an opportunity for economic development based on character and walkability rather than an automobile-driven experience, something that is more in keeping with what this community looks like and what it's interested in. Sort of how you turn the term is a gray field of a former commercial strip into something that's more of a multi-use that includes a residential component, has a different facing to the street, a different interaction for the public. Those are things that I would see as some early opportunities to rehabilitate commercial centers in the other poles of town.
Okay, great. On to housing. We have a large population of long-term residents here, and with our proximity to Boston and great schools, we have created a lot of opportunities for residential development. Please describe some examples of residential development you've been involved in, including senior and affordable housing projects that you have actually been, very involved in your roles.
I've been
And-
involved in
and-
financing of a
Yeah.
lot of affordable housing.
How about in your town administrator roles? Because in the job you had with the state, clearly that was at the forefront. But what's applicable and what you did that would be applicable here?
So it's, again, a matter of, it builds around planning and zoning in terms of what the community is looking for. So we were trying to both manage community character and preserve open space, but also there were development pressures of 55 and older communities where trying to provide an opportunity for downsizing, to move into something that was a different type of housing. Where did that make sense? If we wanted to encourage it from the municipal standpoint, what was the parcels or area that was necessary to support that? That could be a change to the existing zoning or overlay zones where we were trying to encourage a level of development into certain sites. If amenities were not available at the curb by way of infrastructure, that started to drive a different level of discussion with developers that were looking at housing. If this has got to be septic and well, and that's going to provide a different degree of density than you would see with full amenities at the curb. Darien was going through a period of prolonged demolition of existing housing stock with new construction taking place. That was part of the challenge in keeping community character with an influx of folks looking to locate to that part of Connecticut based on its proximity to New York City and provide and make sure that there's an element of community kept, but you're dealing with one-on-one applications and things by right where you're doing an awful lot of demolition. When it became more dense development, those became the bigger questions for the town to wrestle with than the one-offs of what is housing going to look like. Tried to advocate for mixed-use housing in North Branford where we were abandoning the town hall site to provide for a plan and worked with Yale University to come up with what a vision of density looks like. It's very hard for somebody to get an idea of a ratio of how many per square feet per acre. Does that look like? If you have a graphic, it makes it much more easier to tell that story. So we're trying to work through a process of what a development could look like that would be mixed use with some housing component to that. Housing is an integral part of the community. It has to be acknowledged as part of an economic development strategy. It's really what's the product that we're selling for, in this case, Westwood.
Okay. Internal and external communication and citizen engagement have become increasingly important in municipalities. No doubt they were important in Connecticut. What do you see as the role of the town administrator in addressing communication-related matters?
It's I have a hesitation to run to whatever the current in vogue thing is. And with social media evolving, there's an awful lot of in vogue things that pop up. I think it's really a matter of taking a step back and looking at where the citizens are and where you're currently reaching them. So it's almost a communications audit of what tools you have that are working and not working. Is to put things on Facebook and have 3 or 4 people opining on it, it's pretty much a closed loop. Tweeting isn't necessarily going to be the best vehicle to get out a bigger community issue, and those may not be the vehicles to get out the larger message that the town wants to address, and the website may be that vehicle. Directs getting feedback and input from the public is also very helpful in defining where they are, how they consume their information. Is it something that's a long-form written piece, or is it going to be something that they want to get off of social media or something they want to get in their inbox? Trying to understand that community dynamic is important to make sure you're reaching folks. In Darien, as a community that's a bedroom community, one of the hubs of life was around the train station. And we had the benefit of managing the train station for the state. They gave us the opportunity, that was where we were going to put an awful lot of community notices. So when it was budget time and other community dialogue, posters were going up at the train stations because we were trying to meet the public where they were. And if they weren't checking our website and they weren't checking Facebook and other electronic means, that was sort of the old school method of meeting them where they are so that we could make sure we were getting the word out. Mm-hmm. So it's a variety of approaches, I think, would be the best task.
Okay, I want to give you a situational scenario and let you comment. So in conducting, this is hypothetical, in conducting an inspection at an approved construction site, an inspector calls to inform you that she has encountered an independent painting contractor who also serves on the town board that issued approval for the same project. What's the issue? What's the possible issue, and what steps would you take to address this?
There's clearly a potential ethics issue involved here for conflict. I've always gone to town council for sage advice on handling ethics issues. Unfortunately, I've had to navigate a fair number of ethics issues with board members and other elected officials for not just what you can do, but what you should do. And I think ethics is more that conversation of what should you do, and what are the appearance issues, and how is the confidence in the public sector eroded by some of these decisions that folks make, and that perhaps it's best to withdraw and not be a painting contractor in this particular case for what that appearance issue is. Whether there's a local ethics code or state ethics code that perhaps allows it, it's really that appearance issue, and the appearances erode confidence in the town government and sort of what we're trying to uphold here. And unfortunately, I've had experience in that.
Yeah, I'm sure. A couple more questions, and then we'll let you close unless my colleagues have others they want to add. To the extent that you can, and I don't want you to violate any confidentiality, describe the role you've played in resolving a challenging union-related matter. Pick one.
I had to think of a good one. The most challenging union environment I had to navigate was in my time in Western Pennsylvania. As a fiscally distressed municipality, you get certain benefits, and one of them is a limiter on how the union contract works. So there's a cost per man hour worked, and that can only increase by CPI or 3%, whatever's lower. It totally changes the game of contract negotiations. It's no longer work rules and give me a holiday here and a day off there and a percent increase. It's really driven by a specific formula and what that contract looks like and what the unintended consequences are. Because it's formula driven, it's too easy to look at it and say, we'll give up vacation or we'll do something here in order to make the formula work. That may make sense for closing the contract and moving on, but then you have to live with the contract. So it makes it difficult on a recruitment side because you've played this numbers game. In other cases, it's how do we get to two-tier wage scale in order to reach that same end in terms of something that has the potential for providing both of us our obligations under the recovery program, but also something that's fair and gives us the ability to be an employer that can attract talent. It's hard to tell somebody you're not going to get a vacation day for the first 5 years, and then when you do, it's 1 day. That's really difficult to do from a hiring perspective when it's easier to tell a different story. So trying to find that path of mutual agreement with those very narrow limiters would perhaps be the most challenging collective bargaining issue I've had to deal with. The others, by comparison, become somewhat easy.
Drawing on any of the positions you've held over the course of your career, where have you been able to most effectively apply a strategic approach to the situation, the problem, whatever it may be?
North Branford was an area where the board was receptive to shared goal setting and using that as a vehicle to drive strategic planning. So we were able to build a series of strategic and operational plans around services, uses of facilities, decisions to make investments. Being a community that had 2 poles, we had to make a decision on a library investment, which ultimately resulted in 2 made more sense than 1. That required an awful lot of strategic planning work and my facilitation with the library board to work through what that need is and what does that look like. And if we're going to invest in 2 and that makes more sense than 1, how do we convey that to the town council to understand this is how library services are consumed and where can we go in the future? There were additional strategic plans that we were able to deploy in the park and rec space with trying to find a new community center for the community and make it something that was off budget and self-supporting, both in terms of capital and operating. So that was really a tough nut to figure out what was going to be the operating income for the community center, when in most cases there isn't an operating income that can keep the lights on. So trying to figure out that path of what are the potential uses, what's the competition in the private sector that we might be encroaching on. Those become interesting problems to work through.
And in both scenarios, successful outcome?
Both scenarios, successful outcomes with 2 major library investments, leveraging a significant amount of outside grant dollars and good community support for a community center with fundraising opportunities. So both came to positive outcomes.
Wait, did you have a question you want to ask?
You want to just, so sure, Kyle, I'll ask you. So, you've had all these jobs in Connecticut, right? So now you're coming to Westwood. Tell us about your style of leadership that, if you were to get this job, how would you handle it, coming to a new community, even to a new state?
Yeah. Coming to a new state doesn't give me too much trepidation. If I could figure out the 3rd-class city code in Pennsylvania, I think I can navigate Massachusetts, and Massachusetts is close enough to Connecticut where the issues are similar. It's working with what is the executive leadership team in place and trying to find a common agenda that helps me in my interactions with the board, so sort of the consensus goals that the board may have, and working with the executive leadership team on how we can come into alignment with the board's goals in terms of what we're doing and what we're trying to deliver. In terms of leadership, at the beginning, it's a little bit of not necessarily out in front, but leading from alongside. Well, I understand who my people are, what their strengths are, where support is needed, where support isn't needed. I've dealt with a lot of department heads, and a lot of them I've never had to deal with, and they can manage well. Some need a little extra support, and leading from alongside is better for me to evaluate where the strengths are of the team and where I need to deploy myself to make sure that we're delivering for what the board is looking for.
So Carl, could you just talk about when you've worked under elected boards before, did you find that your communication style with those boards was more of an ad hoc as needed, or did you set up kind of a regimen of we talk weekly, I send out updates? What did that look like?
It was a little, the vehicle, it was different in each case, but how I did it was consistent. So everybody got the same thing at the same time. So before email was widespread, that necessitated me calling 9 city council members and having a script to tell them all the same thing at the same time, and praying to God that nobody would ask me a question that required me to deviate from the script.
You were hoping for voicemail.
Well, if I had to deviate from the script, I then had to continue to close the loop and make sure everybody had the same information. Email obviously makes that a heck of a lot easier in order to distribute things quickly if there's an emerging issue or something that the board should be aware of that's a problem that has just cropped up. The agenda packet is also the other vehicle that I've used to communicate with a manager's report for sort of what's going on, things that are in my in-basket, as well as an agenda comments memo to help the board members understand what the issues are in front of them and why it's in front of them. So there's a series of formal prepared pieces that go to each agenda packet, and then really kind of that as-needed emails for updates, this is what's going on, or follow-up in response to a question that came at a meeting, to give the board that additional information so that everybody has the same information at the same time.
Great. Okay, your turn. What would you like to tell us that either reaffirms what you've already said or anything new that you'd like to be sure to touch on?
I think I bring a lot to the table for what Westwood's issues are. I have over 20 years of experience in the public sector in a variety of positions and a variety of communities. I've sort of done the spectrum of two bookends of fiscal distress and a well-heeled community, which has given me perspective to handle a number of challenges. So I think I do bring a lot that could help this community if that's your ultimate decision. And relocating to Massachusetts is not an issue for me and my family. So,
Thank you very much for being with us today.
thank you for your
Appreciate it.
time. I appreciate it.
Okay.
So our next candidate is scheduled for 7:15.
Okay.
Or when is it scheduled?
Okay, we'll take another break then.
Okay.
Connor, if you could give us a break on this.
Send us to commercial.
Welcome back to the Select Board meeting. We have with us our fourth candidate tonight, Melissa Goth, who is here from Brookline. And we are happy to welcome you back to the Select Board meeting and to your final interview for today. I think what I would like to do is ask you to start with just an overview about yourself, where you're from, and whatever you'd like to touch on just to kick things off.
Sure. Melissa Goff, I'm currently the Deputy Town Administrator in Brookline. Started my career in the City of Boston as a budget analyst and got my Master's in Public Administration from Northeastern while I was working at the city. When I finished that program, the opportunity in Brookline came open to be the Assistant Town Administrator. And so in the Assistant Town Administrator role, the budget runs through the Town Administrator's office. And so the Assistant Town Administrator acts as a budget analyst, kind of doing the grunt work of putting together a lot of the budget requests and proposals, but then also staffing certain committees that come up when things come out of town meeting to kind of study an issue and look at certain things. When Sean Cronin, who was the Deputy Town Administrator at the time, got a job working for the state, the opportunity was given to me to step into the deputy role, and I did that 4.5 years ago. It's been a great experience for me in that role. It's been very challenging. And now I'm at the point where I feel like I would like to broaden my experience a little bit beyond kind of budget specific and kind of looking to step up into that town administrator role.
Great. Well, we're happy to have you here to tell us more and answer some questions. We had asked you to prepare a presentation, and we have a hard copy of that. And why don't you take no more than 7 minutes? Okay.
So, a lot of the themes that I'm hearing, my time here and just even doing research is about communication, and I think that's something that all communities struggle with. I think it's something that it's like a well-trained muscle that needs to get flexed a lot, and so this is just a presentation about some efforts that we've done in Brookline to try and improve the communication in the community. The theme is kind of trying to move engagement with constituents beyond the building. And so we have a lot of people that are interested in what's going on in town, don't necessarily have a lot of time. We've had a lot of school issues where, parents can't go to night meetings because they've got childcare issues, still want to stay informed of what's going on. And then also the platforms with which to reach people are changing. And so you've got, the traditional models of newspapers and snail mail, and now the evolution of additional platforms like listservs and social media platforms. And how do you make sure that you're reaching the target audience while you've got a lot of different areas where people are trying to engage with you? And a lot of times we also need to push departments to kind of think creatively about those kinds of problems. And so the team that we have in place in Brookline, we call it the Information Management Governance Committee. It's led by the CIO. He's the chair of the committee, but it's definitely a collaborative effort. And I work in partnership with the CIO to try and figure out how best to position the town in terms of technology investments and other issues that we need to address to help with being more efficient in government. And so we've got definitely a different mix of managers. We've got police and fire, and our schools aren't on here, but they're definitely part of the conversation as well. Our building commissioner, public health, and so we meet on a semi-regular basis to talk about different technology initiatives in the town. And so one of the things that I think, we need to do is lead by example. So I provided some examples of initiatives that are specific to our office that I've been very involved in. The first is around open government and transparency. So our budget document is something that probably hasn't changed for well over 20 years. People are kind of used to the format and are comfortable with it, but I think it's gotten a little stale. And so, we submit it to the GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association, annually to kind of check that we're meeting kind of best practices around communicating and having it be a policy document. But we felt like there's probably room to kind of grow here. We also provide an open checkbook, which we allow people to see transactions in town. Unfortunately, you'd think that kind of thing would be very popular, but not very many clicks. So obviously, some of the information that we're providing may not be the right information formatted in the right way. So we're just in the process of implementing a new software product called OpenGov that it attempts to achieve kind of the transparency and communication and outreach that we think the people will be looking for. So it will help make our budget process a lot easier, but then there's also kind of a civic engagement component to it, which we're excited to try and build budget stories so that they're a little easier to digest for people than instead of kind of going through a document.
Sheets, whatever.
Yep. The next initiative after that is around civic engagement as well. So we have our select board packets that were thick pieces of paper that would have volumes of information. And I think you guys are paperless as well.
We are now.
Yes, but we also push all that information out to the public, and we have been doing that for a number of years. So if you've got an agenda item and you've got your packet in front of you, the person watching at home has that same information, and they can see the same materials that you're looking at as well. And we've been working to push that to other boards and commissions that also have things that people are interested in. So Transportation Board, Planning Board, kind of working with those groups to make sure that they're using the system in the same way. And then the next item, when I was in the assistant role, one of the things that we were working on was the permitting application. So we implemented a new permitting system, and it allowed us to be able to push some of our transactions online instead of having people come into town hall. If you were renewing your restaurant license, you just need to make sure that you submitted all your materials, you could pay with a credit card, and the renewals kind of became a little easier for staff to manage. So those are kind of some examples that we talked about through the group. And then I also listed some other initiatives that I've been involved with, that spreads across a lot of different departments as well. Our Munis is our financial package. There are a lot of interested parties in that. You've got HR, you've got the school department, you've got the comptroller, the finance director. So trying to provide an overall structure for those groups to kind of decide how to utilize the system. Brook Online is what we call our citizen reporter app. So essentially, if you see a broken street light, you could take a picture of it, and then it would get sent directly to our DPW. And that's something that's been in place for a number of years.
How has that worked?
I think it works pretty well because we also are able to give it directly to the people who are, fixing the work, and so they've got handhelds that they can use to call up their work orders, fix the problem, and then close it out all in one fell swoop, which is great. And so just as background information, I provided a report that I had written for town meeting when we had a warrant article filed trying to mandate some of the materials that we were already posting.
Interesting.
And so essentially tried to convince the petitioner and the Finance Advisory Committee that, we'll take on this initiative. We've already been doing it at the select board level, and our goal is to roll it out townwide. And then I just included the press release for the software program that we're in the process of implementing as well, so you could just have a little bit more background on that.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions?
No.
Okay. On to some more questions. So in terms of management skills, you've seen and learned, no doubt, that the town administrator position requires knowledge and skills in a variety of areas: finance, personnel management, land use, and collective bargaining, just to name a few.
Mm-hmm.
In what areas of municipal management do you feel you're the strongest, and what might be an area where you have less experience or expertise and you'd need to rely more on staff?
Sure. I would say that the finance piece is definitely a strength of mine by virtue of running the budget process. The town administrator puts out the budget that ultimately goes to the finance committee and town meeting. That's kind of the first pass.
Yeah.
And so coordinating the CIP and the long-range financial plan, and then ultimately the budget document, is something that I do with the assistant town administrator as help as well.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of, an area where I would need to kind of have more training and professional development and more exposure, I would say economic development is an area that I'm involved in relation to articles and zoning changes that happen with town meeting, but more of a direct involvement is something that I would need to rely a little bit more on staff for.
Mm-hmm. Fair. Speaking of economic development, phase one of our $35 million redevelopment in Islington Center is done, and 2 more phases to follow. And University Station has grown and has a few pieces left. So to the extent you can you comment on anything that has led to economic development in Brookline that you've experienced, and what ideas might you have in Westwood?
Sure. We have a ton of economic development projects going on. We have a new hotel that's in the process of being built in Brookline Village. There was a lot of discussions with zoning that went through town meetings, so I've gotten exposure to kind of that discussion and debates, the trade-offs that get made for certain aspects of the project. We have a lot of 40B development going on in Brookline as well. So a lot of that involves negotiation, because ultimately, if we are not within that 10% of affordable housing, the 40B proposal sometimes is used as a tool to engage the town in a zoning process. And so those are things that also we get exposed to by virtue of briefing the board about what's happening and going through the zoning with town meeting. In terms of Westwood and what could happen, I mean, obviously there's a lot going on already. I think that I'm your target demographic for economic development in Westwood. I mean, I bought in the city 10 years ago, and I like the fact that I've been car-free for 15 years, and that I have an access to a lot of restaurants and a lot of entertainment options in the city. I think Westwood, by virtue of having that train that allows you to still have that access, but you have better amenities that you could offer that would entice someone that maybe doesn't need to be downtown anymore, but would be looking for another option.
Circling back just a little bit, economic development in Brookline, have you played a role with your assessors in examining implications of economic development? In the finance role, is that part of?
Sure.
Yeah.
We actually just this week had our first meeting of many on kind of estimates for new growth. That is something that I think people really realize the value of new growth development and what that will do in terms of helping with the pressure and the structural deficit in town. Some communities will use new growth to feed capital. We currently use it to feed operating. And I think that's something that we're constantly looking at. We have an economic development advisory board that is very tuned into this and very focused on it as well.
Okay. Great. Westwood has a large population of long-term residents, and our proximity to Boston and having great schools attracts or creates opportunities for new residential development. So I'd like you to describe examples of residential development, either senior, affordable housing projects or whatever, and any role you might have played in those in Brookline.
So I think the 40B developments were something that, you know, we've been talking with our planning department about the impact of that on the school system and trying to project that in terms of what the enrollment will be as a result of those projects. In terms of affordable housing, we've had a few really good success stories where we had a property in town that was an old reservoir, and we swapped that land for land across the street, because the state had owned a parcel as well, and we developed affordable housing on the unit, and then we built a park where we had swapped. And so that was a really exciting park up off of Route 9 on Fisher Hill, and that was it was a long project, and ultimately I think everyone was really happy with the outcome.
And what kind of role might have you played in that?
So that was more, you know, as town meeting, and trying to get the articles passed
Actions that were
that allow
necessary.
for the development to move forward.
Great. You gave us a presentation on communications, so I don't think I want to be redundant on that. But why don't you speak on what you see the role of the town administrator to be in initiating things? Like you spoke about things in Brookline, so coming in as town administrator, what would you do to improve communications here in Westwood?
So I think that I've heard a little bit about the frustration on, you know, staying fully informed. And so trying to understand, you know, what we see are the mechanisms for people getting their information. You know, in Brookline, we do every other year a citizen survey where we ask them about quality of life issues. And one of the things that we ask them is, how do you get information from the town? And I'm still shocked that mail is still a primary mechanism for a lot of our residents. And so how do you improve on that? I think it's really about being consistent in what you're providing, and that whatever channel people are tuning into, whether it be the website, whether it be the newspaper, that it's the same information across the board.
Great. I want to give you a scenario, situational piece, and ask you to comment.
Okay.
In conducting an inspection at an approved construction site, an inspector calls to inform you that she has encountered an independent painting contractor who happens to also serve on a town board that issued the approval for the project.
Okay.
What is the possible issue, and what steps would you take to address it?
Well, it sounds like a conflict of interest. I would say first I would check to see if there were any forms filed with the Ethics Commission, just to see if there was any disclosure that was made in advance. But then also I would probably look at town council for some guidance as well. I'm fortunate enough that our town council's on the same floor as the select board office. So
Or on speed dial, right?
yeah, it's a pace across the hall to get, you know, information and advice when you're kind of in a thorny issue, and that definitely would be a thorny issue.
How would you deal with the person?
I think it's really about, you know, being clear about what the rules are and making sure that if there's something that, even if it looks like it's a conflict, it's something that you should be disclosing. And so I think that's part of what needs to happen is, you know, making sure that that person may think it's not even an issue, but the perception of that issue just could make it even worse.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay. A couple more questions, and my colleagues may have some. To the extent you can, and I don't want you to violate any confidentiality, can you describe a role you've played in resolving a challenging union-related matter?
Okay. So I would say that one of the things that I've been kind of involved in is that we've had a lot of turnover in department head positions. And so we have had vacancies that have happened for a long period of time. Our finance director was vacant for over a year. Our HR director was vacant for a year. And so a lot of times you've got people stepping into interim roles that may not have the skill set that you need to manage people. And so I remember having an issue with an employee that was in an interim status, was having a conflict with someone who was in a union role and was about to file a grievance. And so the question was whether or not, you know, we should be disciplining the person who is, serving in the interim role, or how are we going to deal with the problem? And so I kind of looked at it and thought, I think this employee just needs more support, and how can we provide that support to this person so that, when things bubble up, that they don't get to the level where you're talking about grievances. And so I ended up providing support by letting the assistant town administrator move down into that office for a period of time to make sure that, everyone was kind of getting along.
Successful?
Yes. And when we hired the finance director, she noted that the employee was one of the most valuable people in the office. So I thought it was a good sign that we had
Terrific.
done the right thing.
Drawing on the positions you've held during your career, where have you been able to be most effective in applying a strategic approach to solving a problem?
I would say that my work in the ninth school site selection process was definitely something that involved a lot of strategy in terms of trying to figure out what people would want to be able to vote on and what people were comfortable voting on as we were moving in a direction for a site. So would people be comfortable doing a feasibility study, and what would be the conditions around the feasibility study? And we've had a lot of sessions with different parties that were involved in the process, so members of the select board, members of the finance committee, and then staff trying to figure out, throwing things up on a whiteboard, saying, okay, here's the path that we need to get to. We want town meeting approval. What are the steps that need to happen in between to give people a level of comfort that the project is where it needs to be in order to move forward spending a significant amount of money? So. And we've studied the problem and studied the problem and studied the problem.
So you're not there yet?
Well, we're not there yet, but I feel that the process that we used to get there, I felt that we had done a lot of engagement, and that even though maybe politically it wasn't the best choice, I thought the process that we ran was very good.
Excellent. Any other questions?
No, it's great.
Mike?
So just tell us about your leadership style, since, we don't really know, what happens in Brookline, at least not yet. So tell us about, how do you envision yourself on the leadership role, kind of handling people and handling new departments as someone coming in from the outside?
Sure. I think that I'm a very collaborative person. I think that's kind of because of the nature of how I've evolved into the positions that I've been in. So, as the assistant, I had department heads that were above me, and so I still was needing to work on certain budget issues. And then coming into the deputy role, now we're kind of at the same level. And so the relationships that I built as the assistant kind of helped me as I forged forward in the deputy role. And then the work that I do with our finance committee is extremely collaborative. There are 30 members of our finance committee. We call them the advisory committee. They vote on everything. More than just finance-related articles, they vote on everything. Mm-hmm. And so that involves a lot of negotiation in terms of trying to make the two parties, the board and the advisory committee, have a motion that mirrors each other so that town meeting runs smoothly. As long as there's nothing too controversial, kind of trying to see if we can get on the same page with a lot of issues. So, that involves a lot of collaboration, a lot of negotiation, a lot of, informal communication, presentations in front of the groups. So that's something that I've been involved in.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Wrap-up time for you. Anything you'd like to say to reaffirm your comments or add anything new that you might not have been asked about that you'd like to share?
I just think, Westwood has been a community that I've had my eye on for a while. I think that, meeting the department heads today was very helpful. Knowing that you have a good team and, hearing how dedicated and committed they are to the town is very exciting to me. And so just very excited about the opportunity.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you here today. Thank you very much for your
you.
interest.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Melissa.
Okay, so we're at 7:30, and we're not deliberating tonight. We'll be back together Monday night, so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.